and the future of renewables. Joining us on this panel, we also have Mr. Anish Shekhar, IAS, Managing Director, Tamil Nadu Green Energy Corporation Limited. Welcome, sir. We also have with us Mr. Srinivas Krishnaswamy, Chief Executive Officer, Vasudha Foundation, Mr. Venkat Jayagopi, Senior Program Manager, Cities, Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation, and joining us this session, we also have Mr. Martin Schöffler, co-founder, Auroville Consulting. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for our panel here on stage. And with that, I'd like to hand the floor over to our session chair, Exploring Energy Transition Pathways.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. So we have 4 speakers here with us. We would have liked to do this entirely as a conversation, but I think the direction was that we place some initial opening remarks. I think some of our colleagues here have a presentation that's been prepared. I'll request all of them who have a presentation to keep it brief, so within maybe between 8 and 10 minutes, and maybe shorter even if possible. I'll call first on Dr. Anish Shekhar. As he was introduced, he's currently the Managing Director of, Director of Tamil Nadu Green Energy Corporation. He's going to talk about what the Green Energy Corporation and the main energy provider in Tamil Nadu is doing about driving the energy transition. Anish, over to you for your presentation, please. Can he do it from the stage, or can he do it from here as well? What would you prefer? They should come up here on this thing so you can... Can we have Anish's presentation on the screen, please? Yeah. Sure, please. Feel free to do.
So good morning to one and all present here. First of all, thanks to the department for inviting us to be a part of this third summit on climate change. This is a new company that was formed in the last March, Tamil Nadu Green Energy Corporation Limited, which has the single mandate of energy transition. So it's only appropriate that we get to present to you what is the strategy that we have for the state's energy transition. It will be on, no? So we all know this, that power sector or the electricity sector, which is the single most important thing that powered the human progress over the last century. Even though we say that it is the biggest polluter, but at the same time we need to remember that this is the sector that has powered all the comforts that we enjoy in this room and all the progress that human tribe has made over the last century. So we see that almost 75 to 80% of the total emissions come from fossil fuels, including transportation. So that is the volume or the scale at which this sector contributes to the carbon emissions. So is that a challenge? Yes. At the same time, being the challenge that it is, this also gives us an opportunity. The opportunity is that, unlike many other sources of carbon emissions, be it agriculture, be it cement production, steel production, other manufacturing, this 80% is now coming to a level wherein it makes economic sense along with environmental sense to do this energy transition. So when I say energy transition, you all understand that it is about renewable energy, coming from fossil fuels to mainly the coal and gas to renewable sources of energy. So where we stand in Tamil Nadu, we are third in India's total RE installed capacity. We stand third in the country, second in wind, third in solar, fourth in bioenergy. and we have our potential to cover also. When it comes to hydro, we have a lot of potential in pump storage. Solar, again, we are almost nearing the potential. Wind, there is a lot of scope, potential, factoring in the offshore wind also. Bio also, there is potential left. Solar, I should just caution that this is based on estimates a few years back. Now with advanced panels coming in, with the kind of tilt systems that are available, tracking systems, this is also going to go up only. So when I say this is an opportunity, this renewable energy over the last 2 decades have been making inroads. And in the last 5 years, it has been making tremendous inroads. And one thing which always people find difficult with RE or RE integration is that it is not firm, it is not dispatchable, and it comes with a lot of challenges like intermittency. Take solar for example. Solar is the cheapest source of energy available to humankind today. It's around 2.5 rupees per unit. But solar is available only from morning around 8 o'clock to evening 4, 5. So beyond that, it is not available. So this intermittency, and it also follows a bell curve. So it is not steady, firm. So this was the biggest challenge associated with energy transition to solar or RE. Of course, wind is also another source which we have depended on for RE. Tamil Nadu was the leader when it comes to adopting wind. But wind also has challenges. It is not the diurnal variation when it comes to wind. It is the seasonal variation. From May to September, you have wind. And beyond September, wind drops down very significantly. So which is again another challenge to integrate wind into our systems. But when I said the opportunity is there and energy sector could simply become more economically viable than just becoming environmentally viable, the reason is because of the storage technologies that are coming up today. So I'll go into the details a little later. Battery energy storage systems and pump storage systems, and especially battery energy storage systems, which was very costly till a few years back, has come to levels wherein the solar, wind plus storage becomes more cheaper. It is not just more environmental friendly, it becomes more cheaper than traditional sources of generating power. Traditional sources of generating power comes at maybe 6 to 7 rupees, my average purchase cost, considering the variable cost and fixed cost. But today, we are seeing that solar plus storage plus wind, the fixed dispatchable renewable energy, tenders are closing at around 4.5 to 5 rupees. So this makes it very evident that going forward, it is not just the environmental benefit that is going to drive the energy transition, it is also the economic benefit that is going to drive it. That is a huge opportunity ahead of us. So to tap into this opportunity only, this company was created. I am standing here on behalf of this company, which is a subsidiary of the TNEB, Tamil Nadu Electricity Board Limited. So when I said energy transition, it is not just transition. We have to meet the demands also. We have a increasing demand scenario every year. Our demand is also increasing, unlike many other developed countries where demand is more stagnant. Being the developed country, developing country we are, and with the kind of new additions to the power requirements like data centers, EVs, the addition of air conditioners with increasing disposable incomes. So we are seeing that the demand of energy is also increasing on a yearly basis. So not just energy transition we have to handle, we also have to manage this increase in demand for energy. So how are we planning to do it? We plan to add almost, today we have around 24,000 megawatts of RE into our grid. In another 5 years, we need to add the same amount. Almost another 24 gigawatt has to be added over the next 5 years to meet this requirement. So that is the path we are seeing for ourselves. Solar will play a major role. Wind again will play a major role. So beyond that, to add this solar, you have to have something, that is storage. And when it comes to storage, you have two options: battery energy storage systems, pumped hydro storage plants. Tamil Nadu was the first state to come with the policy on pumped hydro storage, which facilitates government-led initiatives as well as private investments to come into the field. So we are looking forward to that. We have identified 15 projects worth around 15,000 megawatt. So for 6 hours storage. So that is one area where we will tap into the storage. Another is battery energy storage systems, where the levelized cost of storage for a double cycle has come down to 2.15 rupees with the VGF. Maybe without VGF it will be around 2.5 rupees. That makes solar plus storage levelized cost to be around 4.5 to 5 rupees. So that is the kind of opportunity that is ahead of us. That is what we are consciously trying to meet. So these battery energy storage systems has huge benefits. Beyond this storage, it helps us utilize the transmission systems better. It helps us to maintain the grid stability. It helps us to maintain the fluctuations in power that is to be managed on a daily basis. So a lot of advantages, lot of use cases for battery energy storage systems, which will change the entire landscape of how we generate and use electricity in the next few years. So we are having two Government of India schemes which is helping us in this transition. One is PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana and PM Kusum scheme, both of which we are very actively promoting. We have more than 20,000 installations done already in PM Surya Ghar, and we have 8 PPAs signed under PM Kusum. We are further going to tap into this opportunity also, which is more about distributed solar. So this is another important area of solar, not just utility. We want to promote distributed solar also, the rooftop solar that is going to be there even in this building. We need to have rooftop solar in your houses. We need to have rooftop solar. Every rooftop which has access to sun, irradiance, which should have a rooftop solar. This has made all consumers also producers. So the new term prosumers, that is production plus consumption, has come into wide accepted parlance. So way forward, solar, I mentioned about solar and battery, very critical, that will drive the entire energy transition. Offshore wind, this is another area where we are exploring. Already Government of India has floated a tender. The cost associated with it is a little high. As soon as it becomes viable on a cost perspective, which is what is being attempted with the VGF scheme also, which now Government of India has announced. Offshore wind is another source from where we can tap into the RE potential. We have 35 gigawatt potential in Tamil Nadu's coast alone. Then of course with so much of storage coming in, managing the grid becomes a very, very intelligent systems or computation involving process. So we need AI-based dispatch and smart grid management. Distributed solar, not just solar generation, storage also distributed, including commercial and industrial establishments have to do this. Then innovation, when I said battery storage, predominantly we are dependent on lithium-based chemistries, a lot of new chemistries, sodium, aluminum. So all these chemistries also we need to explore to ensure raw material security. And I'm sure that this innovation is in energy technology, especially in storage, technology is going to be very, very important going ahead. Demand side management is another key. When I said storage, storage is only when you cannot utilize the solar during the production times. By certain changes, we can always shift certain demands from non-solar hours to solar hours. Like incentivizing tariff-based incentives can be given to people to shift their demand into solar hours, especially when it comes to charging your electric vehicles. We can promote charging during the solar hours. We can even promote people to use their washing machines during solar hours. So there are a lot of ways in which we can shift the demand. Another demand which we plan to shift is this agricultural demand, wherein agri pump set usage also should be shifted to the solar hours. So demand side management is also another strategy which we will use to achieve our net zero ambitions. So this is our strategy. I think I have covered everything. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Anish. Thank you for keeping that reasonably short. Thank you. So we heard from Anish the Tamil Nadu state's plan to decarbonize the electricity sector, and through that, the various end consumers who will be consuming electricity, which is whether it's industry, whether it's households, and broadly the grid. This is the top-down approach to how decarbonization would be thought of at the state level. Maybe next we can hear from Srinivas, who is the CEO of Vasudha Foundation, to discuss what it looks like bottom up. So beyond just decarbonizing the grid, what opportunities exist for districts and for cities to think of decarbonizing beyond what electricity alone can offer you. So Srini, over to you for the next 7 to 8 minutes.
Thanks, Karthik, and a very good afternoon to all of you. Anevarkum vanakkam. As Karthik said, my presentation will focus more on regional approaches for carbon neutrality, or looking at more bottom-up approach. Anish sort of presented the picture of a pan-state approach, but now we're looking at how do we approach the issue of addressing climate change from the city's angle, from the district's angle. Now, just to sort of set the context, and this is not something just for Tamil Nadu alone, but I just thought that there are a lot of subnational, state-level actions that have suddenly started to take place across India. We have, as Tamil Nadu strives to become net zero by well before 2070 and possibly even by 2050, I think that's a talk. Then within Tamil Nadu, you have in the first phase, we are looking at 4 cities, districts that have envisioned to become climate neutral or net zero by 2041, 2 between 2041 and 2050, I would say. In the phase 2, we plan to cover all the districts of Tamil Nadu, which will start immediately thereafter. In addition to Tamil Nadu, if you go to other states, just to give you a landscape of what's happening globally, in India, in Maharashtra, you have 43 cities, urban clusters that have joined the Race to Zero campaign, aiming to become carbon neutral by 2050. Kerala already has a 2050 carbon neutral pathway that we at Vasudha Foundation developed, and that also includes 100% renewables by 2040. Gujarat has announced 100 gigawatts of renewables by 2030 and possible net zero by 2047. Of course, that figure is still not etched in stone, but anyway, they're looking at some date close to that. And then we have Odisha that has introduced carbon budgeting in the state towards becoming a net zero economy by 2070, and so on and so forth. So you have Uttar Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Andhra Pradesh, which recently at the at the RE summit in Gujarat, in Gandhinagar, last year announced 160 gigawatts of renewables by 2029, and is also becoming net zero economy well before 2070. So you do have a lot of state level actions. You do have a lot of subnational or within the state, district and city level actions. Now, why is there a merit? What are the advantages, challenges and opportunities to actually go take a bottom-up approach? Why do you want to look at cities and why do you want to look at districts? So I'll start off with the opportunities. Number one, geographic, specific and very tailor-made interventions. So when you have a state or a national approach, you tend to be very prescriptive in nature, and it sort of gives you or could give you a laundry list of what all actions that could take place. Whereas if you have a very geographic specific, you identify what the problems in the geography are and come up with very, very specific interventions with very realistic target setting. That's also possible because you know the problem, you know the area, you know the landscape, and you can come up. And I would, and I'll talk of Rajapalyam as a prime example further. Third is opportunities to leverage inherent strengths of the geography. Again, every geography has certain strengths, whether it is in terms of the location, the topography, the landscape and so on, and how do you leverage the strength? And that is possible when you have a very, very specific, geographic specific approach. Coordinated efforts and possibilities of convergence of schemes is very high. Now, this is important because you have a collector or you have a district administration who can take control, and all of the departments come under the collector. So there is a lot of possibilities, the chances of either the collector or the municipal commissioner taking getting convergence of schemes is important because that's where you unlock a lot of resources that otherwise go unspent or you don't know that the money is there in the system. Gap funding by CSRs, especially CSRs that work in the geography, that's also very high. Developing replicable pilots so you can have proof of concepts there in an area and show how it works. And importantly, provide good linkage to city planning, master plan, Gram Panchayat development plan, district plan, etc., which otherwise never happens. There are challenges. The challenges in doing this kind of localized planning, you don't have data that's easily available. That, again, is a very, very major challenge in robust planning. And varying priorities of local administration, that also becomes an issue. Access to finance could be it is a boon as well as a bane. And then you have limited technical capacities at the district level. Now, this is sort of just to give you a sense of Tamil Nadu, how you could look at tailor-made, how do you look at very local specific issues. So if you look at the area of the Changalpet, that area which supplies water to Tamil Nadu, I think the biggest problem is water scarcity. How do you address the focus on water stress, fresh water sources, rejuvenation, and so on, because that is the main supply of water to Chennai area. If that goes off, then Chennai doesn't get its water from. Then if you look at Ramanathapuram, where we're very active, and Thoothukudi, Sam is here, we're working very closely with the British High Commission there. You're looking at coastal ecosystem production, waste management, and sustainable mobility. Again, there's a huge amount of tourism influx there. And so that's an issue. And of course, recently, it's also the flood management that has played a role. If you look at this way, Vinodanagar and Rajapalyam, that's a typical example or showcase for textile sector decarbonization. Rajapalyam can be a model city, that can be showcased and what kind of actions that can actually be done in that city. And then similarly, if you look at other areas, Coimbatore, MSME clusters. If you look at Krishnagiri, that's an MSME cluster, decarbonization, EV hub. And then if you look at Nilgiris, the entire Western Ghats, huge potential to be a sequestration hub for Tamil Nadu. Traditional shola forests and grasslands need to be rejuvenated, protected. I think that's a problem, right? So now I'm just going to go into Rajapalyam. Now, what we did in Rajapalyam is we did a detailed greenhouse gas emissions inventories for Rajapalyam, and we try to sync the action plan in line with the master plan that has been approved and adopted by the government of Tamil Nadu. We identified key areas. I'm not going to get into the details, but it ranges from afforestation and restoration of green spaces and getting into waste management and sustainable transport. So this is the Rajapalyam. We came up with a decarbonization pathway there. Now in a business as usual scenario, we saw that the emissions for Rajapalyam could increase from 686 kilotons to 777. But then you do have pathways where there's a detailed recommendation with year-on-year actions that could bring down the emissions to zero by 2037, 2038. But of course, that would include lifestyle changes. So there is a detailed pathway, and I'm very, very happy to inform you all that this action plan was launched earlier this morning, and full thanks to the Ramco Community Services and the entire support system that we had in developing the entire Rajapalyam action plan. Now, we have done similar work for Virudhunagar, which again, it shows all the sectors that one can look at and what are the kind of actions, and also what are the benefits by interventions, what are the kind of emission reductions. Similar exercise for Nilgiris too. Now, way forward, a few random thoughts. Yes, it's nice to make a plan, but how do you get it operationalized? I think that's the most important. So one is setting up a governing or a management committee, which is very, very crucial for implementation, and it could be under the chairmanship of the collector and preferably from the principal secretary and so on at the state level. A project management unit is absolutely essential. Again, from the development of DPRs, detailed project reports, looking at potential assessment studies, so on and so forth. This is the work that the PMU could do. Prioritization and target setting is something the PMU could do with the management committee. putting in place a very robust monitoring, evaluation, and course correction where required. Essential that it should be rooted in communities and to ensure buy-in and engagement. Like I said, in Rajapalayam, we had the Ramco Community Services help along with us reach out to a wide range of stakeholders and get their buy-in, right? So that is very important. A very people-centric approach versus just a technological shift. And rooted in key issues, so the issues that are there, and core benefits, rather than focus on CO2 reduction. So it can't be just an emission reduction, decarbonization pathway, but it should look at how can the city or the geography grow with everyone developing along with that. That should be the approach that we thought. I'll stop here for now. Thank you. Thank you, Karthik.
Thank you, Srini, for taking us through that. I also see Ms. Nirmala is here with us. Thank you for enabling this fantastic work. So what we heard from Srini was the need for communities, especially cities and districts, to factor in what their regional advantages are, what is inherently possible within those geographies, and then attempting to do the best that they can. And it could be in different areas. So we heard about the case of Rajapalayam, and briefly, I think Virudhunagar was covered. I think the reports are available in the public domain for anybody here to peruse. So having seen that approach, I'd like to move now to our colleague from the Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation. He is currently the senior manager for the mobility program, the cities program actually, Venkat Jayagopi. Venkat, I'm presuming your talk is going to talk about what cities in Tamil Nadu can do about decarbonization. But if it's a different topic, entertain us with that, please. Yeah, over to you.
Thank you, Karthik.
Little closer.
Actually, we're looking more at a state level systems approach to decarbonization and how to go about that. So again, this just explains on how Shakti is thinking about this, how to move beyond the planning phase, because Tamil Nadu, again, like we all know, has taken those first steps. Unlike most other states, we already have like a long-term pathways, we already have like a vision, we already have like key actions, we already know what needs to be done as a state at a large level. We know how much solar we need, how much wind we need, how much e-buses we need, how much sequestration we need to do. But the challenge now is to not let this stop at the planning phase, not getting into the planning paralysis and move on to the implementation phase of this. And so how we are looking at this project, how we are looking at this problem is again three main components. One is contextualization, compromise, and co-create. Again, contextualization again is a lot to do with what again Srini also touched upon in his presentation, to understand what the local level problems are, what is achievable at a local scale. Mr. Anish spoke about, say, the rooftop solar scheme. Now, rooftop solar, yes, as a potential, you have so much rooftop area within all cities, most urban areas have it. But at a practical level, how much of it can you actually install? Because if you look at rooftop spaces, those are spaces which are in especially dense urban areas, it's always public space. It's almost semi-public space. It's your only access to open space. People don't want to give that up for, say, even the revenues that they're earning from installing rooftop solar. Or in a lot of cases, the most common questions you'll get when...
Closer to your mouth, I think.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's not being picked up.
Yeah, is it better now? Yeah, okay. So in most cases, when you're going to local communities to talk about rooftop solar, the common problems they have is like, oh, where will I dry my clothes? Because that is, again, practical on-ground problems that are occurring, which, again, the policies don't address. Because policies are talking about subsidies, they're talking about how you're going to do it, but convincing people to do it, changing that mindset, changing that messaging is still missing. Something similar with your agrivoltaics and your PM Kusum, because people, the farmers especially, are not very convinced on the transitioning, because there's no actual demonstrable examples to show them that, okay, their yields will not reduce, because that is their primary goal. The solar can be a secondary subsidiary income to them, but their primary goal is their agriculture and agriculture output. We need to really show them that their agriculture, their cropping patterns need not change, their yields will not be impacted. And similarly, like also practical problems in this to solve are around, like say, how a tractor would operate in a field. if you're going for, say, paddy cultivation, I mean, it works well with when you're doing vegetables and all of that sectors, but when you're going into, say, paddy cultivation, how is you going to operate tractors in small fields? In your larger fields, again, that is sorted, but there are challenges around that. So your program messaging, the policy contextualizations need to address these kind of issues. Then again, of course, is the compromise. Now, in any of these actions, there are multiple actors, there are multiple interest groups, and nobody comes from a place of malice. Everybody has their own mandates, they have their own ideas, their own priorities to work on. So you need to see how an effective middle ground can be achieved. Because again, the moment you have competing opinions, unlike in social sector especially, there's a lot of paralysis because everybody feels that their sector of focus should be the one should be the one getting the funding, should be the one getting priority in terms of government schemes, in terms of government push, government will. But again, that cannot always be the case. And even within the same sector, say for example, in terms of, again, going back to the adoption of rooftop solar, you have, so if you are, say, taking up rooftop solar in your larger consumer scale, so the discoms again might not really be for it because you are making them lose their most high-paying customers, and then they are stuck with the liability of the subsidized customers, the low consumers, all of that. So again, now how do you arrive at that compromise so that everybody is in a win-win scenario in this? Now, again, what starts happening is now when you don't have this, you start getting into everybody wants to get their perfect solution in. The middle ground approach is what we ideally need because change is always incremental. We cannot let the perfect be the enemy of the good in these cases. And finally, to the last point that I wanted to cover in this is around co-creating. Again, aligning, again, Srini also touched on this, aligning your climate objectives with your other priorities in the state. Again, this will help unlock funding. Like, now, how do you reimagine a climate project as something that is a climate project as an economic development project or a social development project, because the state has those goals. The state has funding, specific fundings for those targets. Now, how do you integrate all of these targets? Because again, climate cannot be looked at as an individual sector. You can very well integrate into economy, into health, into industry, into MSME, into most departments run by the state government. And then, of course, at a larger level, how do you integrate it with your Tamil Nadu's goal of like 1 trillion economy? How does that integration happen? Can we reimagine those narratives around climate project? And of course, bringing in vulnerable communities, bringing in people or marginalized sections of societies, women, say the landless rural agriculturalists, because these are people who we can use the climate targets to help uplift, and they can become the early adopters. It's a win-win scenario because again, you have somebody who's going to champion your goals at a local level while at the same time achieving benefits for them. And finally, of course, looking at scenarios where you can work together with them to co-create projects. How do you do, say for example, instead of say banning a BS3 vehicle or a BS2 vehicle, which are high polluting vehicles, can we look at a scenario where we can make projects with say a transport union or a auto union where you are enabling their shift towards a EV without the straight up, because these kind of bans always impact the lowest sections of society who are not able to make that transition very easily, because again, mostly for financial reasons. And the final point I wanted to also cover is on learning from others' mistakes. Because again, the energy transition pathway that Tamil Nadu is trying to get on is fairly unique. In India, we are the first to do a lot of things. But there are other examples around the globe, especially say in Europe, you go to European countries, they have done it, they have had successes, they have had failures, and we need to learn from that. Because again, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, because once you miss it, once say you go into the transition phase, there are issues. Say for example, if you're not able to supply the required energy, that starts creating that level of ill will or the sour taste in people's mouth around energy transition. You'll ruin the goodwill that you have around these initiatives, which could push back the whole effort by decades. Yeah, I think I'd like to close with that.
Thank you,
Just wanted to
Venkat.
keep it
I think it was useful to hear the perspectives balanced by, what is it that we should be aiming for. But sometimes it also felt like we were offering many reasons for not acting as well. Maybe we'll get into that during the discussion. And finally, so we heard from Venkat on what is it that the state needs to look at beyond just the mitigation opportunity, but looking at the trade-offs that actually exist, whether it is for community well-being, whether it's for revenues for the discoms. We'll shift right back to, I guess, the big picture, but we're going to hear from Martin. For those of you who are not familiar with who Martin is, Martin works at Auroville Consulting. He's one of those people who's actually got his hands dirty for many years trying to transition a reasonably large community like Auroville. So we will hear from his experience of what, I guess, working at Auroville has been, and with the entities that are also on this dais. So Martin, over to you for the next 6 or 7 minutes. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Karthik. Good afternoon to the audience and dear friends and colleagues on the panel. I would like to take a few minutes just to look at the opportunities in driving Tamil Nadu's manufacturing ambitions by providing clean, reliable, and affordable energy to industries. I know we are running a very tight timeline, so I'll keep it short. So clean, affordable, reliable energy has become pivotal for any kind of sustainable development, particularly in Tamil Nadu, where we have a very robust and vibrant manufacturing base. I think having access to clean energy is critical in driving economic growth and development. So then by prioritizing decarbonization and leveraging on Tamil Nadu's potential in terms of renewable energy, Tamil Nadu can position itself as a global green manufacturing hub. And it has done so already very proactively at the Davos Economic Forum recently. We have heard we have different targets. We have an India target to achieve net zero in the year 2027. Tamil Nadu has a slightly more ambitious target to achieve net zero, possibly 2 decades earlier. And the energy sector is currently, and specifically the electricity sector, is a key contributor when we look at Tamil Nadu's greenhouse gas emission inventory. About 61% of the total greenhouse gas emissions currently come from the electricity sector. The good news is that today solar and wind energy are the cheapest sources of energy that we have on the planet. And even other technologies such as battery energy storage have become financially viable at this point in time. Now, if we look at the global context, international legislation on decarbonization, such as regulations such as carbon taxes, are driving the decarbonization effort for industries. So we have currently about 46 countries in the world that have introduced either a carbon tax or an emission trading scheme. A prominent example is the European Union's Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, short CBAM, which mandates a carbon tax of imported goods and services from countries that have less stringent climate change policies than the European Union, which has a direct impact to a large manufacturing set in Tamil Nadu. We have seen that this gives you a little bit the potential for renewable energy in Tamil Nadu. I know there are different numbers out there. This is only indicative. So we are talking about approximately 120 gigawatt of onshore and offshore wind combined, and 17 to 18 gigawatt of solar energy. And this is only taking the wasteland available in Tamil Nadu. It wouldn't consider floating solar or rooftop solar. And there is approximately a 90 gigawatt of hydro potential. So Tamil Nadu is endowed uniquely in India with a very diverse set of renewable energy potential from wind, solar, and hydro. Now, this is a snapshot of what we have today. Today, we have approximately a 23 gigawatt of carbon neutral energy sources installed. The potential is 141, so we have achieved 70%. So there is definitely a huge potential for Tamil Nadu to increase the capacity. Now, this gives you a comparison of different states in India that have focused or that try to position themselves as manufacturing hubs. So the argument would be that for any state to attract future investment, the access to clean energy will be pivotal. So if we see here, Karnataka and Rajasthan are leading the race. They have more than 50% of its total energy coming from carbon neutral energy resources. Tamil Nadu currently has 36, it's slightly behind Gujarat. But Tamil Nadu is well poised to increase its share of carbon neutral energy. This is giving you a chart where we have simulated two different decarbonization pathways for the Tamil Nadu's power sector. We have looked at two scenarios. Both of them align with the Paris Agreement. The one in dark looks at a scenario where Tamil Nadu would commit of aligning with achieving global warming of less than 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2050. And the other one is a scenario where it aligns with less than 2% of global warming. So what that means is, in terms of 2030 as an intermediate milestone, Tamil Nadu would need to have 80% of its total energy coming from carbon neutral sources by 2030 if it wants to align with the 1.5 degree Celsius scenario, or a 57% of energy from carbon neutral sources if it would like to go for the 2 degree Celsius scenario. Now, any kind of investors needs predictability and policy security. For Tamil Nadu, in order to attract investment, it needs to provide investment security, which means a stable policy environment, clear goals and sector-wise decarbonization targets that can be translated into legislation and policies and implementation plans. I'm closing here. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you so much for keeping that short and crisp, Martin. Maybe I'll start the questions with you, given that you've taken the least airtime. The question that I had is, we heard from Anish, of course, that there are significant plans, for instance, for the PM Surya Ghar Yojana, as well as the Kusum scheme. We understand, of course, certain states like Maharashtra, for instance, have raced ahead on the Kusum scheme. So, from your perspective, what do you think Tamil Nadu can do to do better on solar, given that we are significantly behind in terms of the potential that we have and how much we've tapped into? And what is the opportunity that exists with rooftop solar? Because that seems to be the way in which we can ensure that this conflict with land availability is avoided. So from the Tamil Nadu perspective, what do you think the state can do to get more consumers on board with rooftop solar?
It's like a bucket list of wishes. And I'm looking at my colleague, of course. So I think Tamil Nadu could maybe be more proactive in endorsing ongoing schemes by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. Kusum C, or any of the Kusum scheme, unfortunately hasn't been successful in any of the states. So Tamil Nadu is no exceptions there. I know there was a lot of investment in Tamil Nadu to make Kusum C work, but it hasn't manifested as of today. Similarly, I would like to see Tancheku taking a proactive role for Surya Ghar, possibly even playing an aggregator role, and facilitating Surya Ghar also with on-bill financing.
Okay, so basically on-bill financing to ensure that the capital expenditure from the households is limited, and you're recovering that, and Tangentco playing the active role of an aggregator that then guarantees demand from different households to the developers, basically.
Yeah.
So, Anish, maybe to play that counter with you, is that a role that Tangentco envisions happening? Because in the past, what we've seen is, I think it was either, I can't remember who mentioned, maybe he did, right? With regard to discoms not liking the revenue paying consumers going away. It's an old argument, but we've seen that processing of applications typically for rooftop solar have been on the slower side in many states. There are a few examples that I have from Tamil Nadu also, Chennai for instance. So do you feel that those bottlenecks have been removed and that consumers are more likely to go for rooftop solar given the the awareness that's being generated? Where do you see the main bottlenecks for you as the operator of the system?
Yeah. So when it comes to rooftop solar in residential buildings, the main challenge we face is that we have a tariff structure wherein people don't pay much for electricity till the consumption crosses 500 units. So we have on a billing cycle of 2 months, 100 units, which is absolutely free. So, and the increase in tariff is also telescopic. So till 500 units, investing in a rooftop solar, even after the subsidy that is given by the PM Surya Ghar scheme, it is not an economically viable proposition for the consumer or the residential owner. So that is the most important challenge when it comes to taking this scheme at a scale that which we really want to. So if I have around 3 crore consumers, near to 3 crore consumers, my consumer base which crosses 500 units on a billing cycle is only around 10 lakhs. So my target from the total overall billing consumers is, it's a very small percentage of the overall consumers. So therein lies the challenge to take it to that level of consumers. And also this can happen only by continuous awareness generation, and also by way of creating models, like now they have come up with a utility-led aggregator model. We are examining that. So whatever is adding value to the entire society, to the entire population, to the citizenry, we are willing to take up. Ultimately, also another challenge associated with PM Surya Ghar, which DISCOMs, if that was raised, DISCOMs are not very keen on doing this. Why? Because it is about the net metering facility that is given under the PM Surya Ghar, or any rooftop solar, residential rooftop solar for that matter. So whatever you are using, you use consuming during solar hours, you use it. Beyond whatever you are consuming, it is banked, and you get to use it during non-solar hours. When my average power purchase cost is somewhere around 10 rupees, you generate at 2.5 rupees and use at 10 rupees. So this, actually it is not the problem of DISCOMs. I mean, once this happens, what will happen is that this cost is somehow socialized into the entire consumer base. Ultimately, who pays for it? Somebody has to pay for this. So it gets socialized into the community. So whether we should go for how much of incentivization is something that we all need to discuss.
Thank you for, I think, explaining to a lot of the audience what the challenges you face are. And, and my favorite example to sort of step out beyond just electricity is transport, right? I mean, having grown up in Chennai and taking the buses, I feel like this is one city that has stayed frozen in time in terms of the quality of the services that are there. So Vijay, I want to come to you. Given that you run the, the cities program, and you talked about these trade-offs, it clearly feels like transport is one of those sectors where the trade-offs are great for everybody, right? Public transport facilitation means that you're having, much better sort of lived experience in the cities. Congestion is avoided, mobility for the poor is taken care of. But yet, we find that we are basically getting trapped into expensive private mobility options. So, in your framework of addressing trade-offs, what do you think cities in the state of Tamil Nadu, for that matter, anywhere, what do you think they should be doing to get more public transit and better and cleaner transit in? And from your experience, yeah.
So again, transit is the challenging thing with transit is getting the people who have moved on to cars. See, cars have become an aspirational goal. Rather than more of a mobility, this has become a status symbol for people to own a car. The moment you own a car, you're going to obviously use that car. So that mindset, one part we need to change. In terms of investments, Tamil Nadu is doing a lot of investments compared to other states in public transportation. They have fairly good public transportation, especially Chennai. You have the suburban rails, you have the metro, you have the buses. Buses are always been good. The services are there. Again, bringing in more reliability in other cities, if you're looking at it, bringing in more reliability, bringing in a system where you are trying to, say, restrict your car ownership, the other side of it, when you're taxing your car owners for the disproportionate use of roads that they have. But again, a lot of these are also not politically viable solutions because there will be a lot
So
of...
how do you make them? That's the question. So how are you going to make them politically viable? What is it that you have to show? And what is the example that you may have to sort of...
So probably, I mean, the go-to example for transportation is always London, how they use the integrated model. I mean, TfL, that's the model that they use. But again, that took them 20, 25 years to get right. We can't expect our cities to immediately start off and then be there in the next 2-3 years. TfL has been operating with 1990, 1980s, 1990s, say they've been operating and they've achieved right now in the last, 5-10 years is where they've achieved the levels that they need to do, where they've integrated. I mean, maybe we need to give the cities time. That is something that probably we'll have to wait it out as a system. Like invest in the right areas, make the right pushes, social pushes, and give that time to change.
But for all of that, right, when you speak to a resident of a city like London, they will say, you step out of London and the transportation is right back to the Middle Ages, right? It's again big car dependency. So even places like London, which seem to have solved it for
A limited
select
area.
few. Right?
Select
so
few
clearly
area.
it's not a problem that's been addressed. And and Srini, since you worked in Rajapalayam, right? I mean, I'm not very familiar with it. The only thing that I know about Rajapalayam is the hound, to be honest. So we all, of course, have known about it. But in the city of Rajapalayam, mobility, what has been the thought that you've tried to instill through the report and your conversations with the stakeholders there? And what is the reception that you've seen to some of the challenges that have been tabled here? For instance, aspiration, right, with regard to owning a car. Very much something that you're seeing even in cities like Chennai, which historically were not. So how do you think that might end up being tackled in the plan that you have for Rajapalayam?
And I'm going to sort of bring in the PM Suryagar also here because I think it's got some relevance. Anish made a point, and I think, yes, the tariffs are an issue, but then I think the bigger issue is consumer awareness, and we saw that in UP too, right? I think what we really need is tailor-made, consumer awareness boot camp, so to speak, that can reach out to communities like what we have done in UP. Reach out to close to about, in Ayodhya alone, we did close to about 100 boot camps. And every city we need to do the boot camps, the kind of work that you guys have been doing in Uttarakhand, right? And the guys that we've been doing in UP. I think that's the kind of model that we require, and that would really help in creating that awareness. How do you sort of create economic sense? And I always give an example. Now, Gujarat, why is it number one in rooftop solar? Because people are aware of that. You have enough number of developers on the ground. Do you have number of developers in Rajapalayam? You don't. You need to create the kind of developers on the ground who can set up these projects. And I think that's the kind of thing you need to do. Now, is it going to, and there was this very interesting example that when we had a meeting with the Spinning Mill Association. In fact, what they have done is they are encouraging all the textile mills to actually, workers to actually cycle to factory or to do two-wheeler pooling, right? Like a car pooling or do a two-wheeler pooling. So there is already that been instilled amongst these, the community of Rajapalayam that they need to look at a sustainable lifestyle. So I think what would drive this is that I don't think you can stop anyone from owning a car or having an aspiration of owning the car, but it's the question of how much you want to use a car and where do you use a car? Where can you use a car versus where can you cycle, where can you bike it? I think that's the kind of support that we got in all our interactions, whether with the farming community or with, and I'll give you an example of the farming community also, and it's a little aside. There are a lot of people who are cultivating rice, and when we ask them that, look, rice is also one of the major emitters, and would you like to shift to millets? And they said, we'll be happy to look into it. There is that, but you need to give them, okay, what are the alternatives? What are the market linkages? I think that kind of hand-holding is required, and if you are able to do that kind of hand-holding, then I think it would work. And that is the reason why we believe that working in smaller geographies or looking at districts and cities would help, because you can put in that effort and you can rope in the community. And also it's important that you tie up with local organizations. In our case, it was the Ramco Community Services, but in other cases, you do have local NGOs. So it's very important that you have that tie-up.
Thanks, Srini. I know we may be running close to time, but some of you have patiently sat through. So any burning questions, people who may have access to a mic, otherwise you can just stand up and maybe try and be loud. Any questions here from folks who are sitting in the first 10 rows? Anyone behind? We've got a lot of experienced folks here. Anyone with questions? Controversial ones are also fine. Colleagues from ITDP, did you want to pose any questions here? Sure, Venu. Yeah. Why don't you just shout it out? I'll say it out. The industry leaders or the political leaders? Mix of both. So what Venu's question is, we all sort of talk about the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, which is this energy transition. So who is really supporting that from the political leadership as well as the community leadership, right? So I think in the case of Srini, the answer is clear that there is, of course, the Ramco community, which is supporting that in some way, and they're galvanizing support. Anish, maybe to ask you, which is, you of course have to straddle the space where there are political incentives for doing certain things, and then there's of course on-ground challenges. So do you feel that there is enough push from the political class here in the state of Tamil Nadu? Of course, it's a tough question. They've all agreed and said, yes, we want to drive it. But what is the main consideration that you think is holding back things like, for instance, augmenting bus services, whether it's in the city of Chennai, or whether it is, rolling out more progressive tariffs, right? So how do you think we can actually nudge beyond? It's a very tricky question on stage, but please make your best attempt at this.
So if I can answer this, I believe that setting a model or government showing the way, I think it shows the way by way of the policies that it comes up with. And we have been having one of the most progressive policies when it comes to integration of RE. We have one of the most robust open access in the entire country, which has really spurred the industrial growth in our state. So even recently we came up with the first pump storage policy, small hydro policy, wind repowering policy. So the state has set its intent by way of its policies. Beyond this also, in our own rooftops, we are putting solar. We have done it on a capex mode till now. Now going ahead, we are going to do it on a resco mode to cover the entire government, public sector and other buildings also. So in whatever ways possible, we are showing the way. But another important point when it comes to energy transition, which is relevant to me, is electricity, right? Other transportation, I think it is coming up later in the day. Energy transition, as I said earlier during my presentation, there is no need for anybody to push it, because it is economically becoming the most viable option for any energy procurement going in the future. So it is going to happen it is not just because of the environmental value, it is because of the economic value, so it will happen.
Thank you, Anish. So I guess you've basically laid down and said, because it makes economic sense, Tamil Nadu will go ahead and do it. Fantastic. I think that's a good positive note for us to try and end this session on. A round of applause for our four panelists, please, for having patiently taken us through it. Thank you, Martin, Srini, Anish, and Vivek. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And of course, to officially draw our session to a close, if I may please request our session chair to present our speakers with mementos, extending our heartfelt appreciation. Ladies and gentlemen, please join them with a loud round of applause as our session chair, Mr. Karthik Ganeshan, presents Mr. Anish Shekhar with a token of our appreciation. Thank you, sir. Mr. Srinivas Krishnaswamy, Mr. Venkat Jayagopi, and Mr. Martin Schöffler. I'd also like to take the opportunity to request Mr. Martin to present our session chair, Mr. Karthik Ganeshan, with a token of our appreciation. This has been an interesting session for us to start on, ladies and gentlemen. A lovely reminder that the future of energy transition is not really one size fits all, and we need to pay closer attention and, of course, work on reshaping how we think about it. A loud round of applause for our panelists on stage. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I think this session itself has also been a learning curve for all of us, that alongside our statewide approach, there's also a more localized approach that we can take when it comes to